A very wonderful, warm, and loving hello to all of you here for a new Love Oracle, Love Tarot. Today, we're going to take a look at your special someone, your counterpart, your desired partner, and see what's happening with making contact. You might be asking yourself, we're now going to dive into the communication here. You're asking yourself the question, maybe you're currently in contact, or maybe you're just about to get in touch. And you're asking yourself if there is already contact right now, maybe it's just starting again, or maybe contact is about to happen again. You're wondering, yes, will he pull back again this time? Will it be just like it was before? Because he replies, then he doesn't reply again. This on and off, over and over. Maybe that's weighing on your mind. So today, let's take a look at what's really going on and whether things will play out the same way as they did last time, or as they always have. We're tapping into the energy of the present, the most present energy. There we go, that I want to show here for the collective. This is about your special someone, whether male or female. Please always adapt the character cards to fit your own situation, just as you always adapt your situation in a collective reading to suit yourself. We're working with the collective here, so not every collective reading can be 100% accurate one-to-one. And it also can't apply completely to everyone. But I know you'll take exactly what fits your situation. And if, for example, it's mentioned that there's another person involved and you say, no, he or she doesn't have anyone else, then just leave that part out. That's simply the part that doesn't fit your situation. If something else resonates with you, then that means the collective reading is also meant for you. And no matter when you watch this video, it will come to you at the moment when there is a message in it that is helpful for you, supportive. And now I want to give you all a big, warm hug and thank you from the bottom of my heart for your presence, for your loyalty, for your existence, and for all your wonderfully kind comments once again. Thank you so, so much for that. And you are always more than welcome to leave suggestions for a collective reading in the comments at any time. And I read every single one of your comments, and I also noticed that this question comes up: will things ever be the way they once were? And a lot of it is about contact, right? I also notice it in the personal readings that for many people, the question is, will it really be the same as it once was? Especially when it shows that, okay, now there is contact between you again, or something is happening. Or especially when contact has just been reestablished. And that's what we're going to look at. So I would say, let's get started and take a look at that. Okay. So we have the fox, okay? Good. The fox, that's like you assume that there's some kind of deception or something going on here. This suspicion or this premonition, something is going on again in this area, like, yes, he's deceiving you, or now he's not getting in touch anymore. You reply right away, you're full of joy. Hey, he wrote to me, and then maybe nothing else comes, right? Or you immediately get that anxiety when you write, he doesn't reply anymore, right? Or now we have contact here for a while and then he disappears again. Like a submarine going underwater. But the thing is, he also always has his own issues going on. And it goes further, about things like cheating in his past, which you might not know about right now. That's actually his issue here, something that's really weighing on him at the moment. And there's something here that when he's in contact with you, or when you two are in contact, you assume there's some kind of deception, that maybe something will go wrong again, because Hao Sha is very secretive and so on. Maybe you also have the suspicion that he's hiding something from you here. I mean, yeah, if you have the suspicion that he's hiding something from you, yeah, that's going to show too, because he'll let a bit of his disguise come to light. But what we also have here, which I think is great, is movement. So he's already trying a bit again, yeah, to maybe stick to the old pattern a little, or that. But that's because of what's going on in the background for him. As I said, things you don't know about, what's happening behind the scenes, his situation. He might also be secretive about it, only tells you a small part, you know. And deep inside, what really occupies him is a longing. Yes, he's moving slowly, okay? So that's definitely what we have here. And maybe it's also been quite a longer period where the situation has always been between you two. But here, something is starting to move. Yes, it's progressing slowly, okay. But we do have movement because he's actually heading straight towards something here. Change, we have movement. So I think that's really good already. Then we have the scythe. Because what you don't see in the background, what you don't notice, is also the burden that he or she is carrying. And so we're dealing with different topics here now, a different question, but these are his issues that want to be shown here. And he really is dealing with them because there's something he wants to end, you know? There's something here, but this is about communication. We're in the energy of communication between you two because movement is coming in there. We'll take a closer look at what exactly is triggering this, what is causing this change, this movement to come in, where his longings are, where he suddenly speaks up like, wait a minute, I want something different here, because it's also being shown again that this is connected to his burdens, the burdens he carries, maybe entanglements. As we showed earlier, maybe this betrayal, something sneaky or some kind of deception that's also happening in his background. There's definitely movement there because we actually have a rapid development. Not just for you, you know, with his situation, because something is moving him here, something triggers it in the communication between you two, which causes him to, end this, and really quickly, like really fast, because it's kind of like, for him, it's as if a lightning bolt strikes, you know, something that basically wakes him up. Waking up, which stirs his longings, and the longing is also the distance from you, where maybe he hasn't really paid much attention to it anymore, you know? Yeah. So let's see what else we can get here, you know? Oh, movement. So fantastic. Like I said, we have here, I'm really very curious to see what else we'll find here. We really have movement because we have a new beginning. Something is happening. There's something that suddenly goes bang for him, something unexpected and powerful that really gets him moving, makes him set out to change something important, and also makes him quickly decide to take action without hesitation or delay. So he really gets into action. And he's going to take matters into his own hands, you know. So therium, we have activity, a lot of activity, even fast-paced activity. And he's really going to him. He wants something positive. He wants to make progress somehow. And as I said, I keep coming back to these longings, you know, I keep getting stuck on them. And because this is a decisive card here. So, and then what else do we have, which I also find really, really great? We have the sun, okay? And with the sun, it's also like this, yes, we have a card of luck here as well. Something is moving him, triggers something in contact with you, so that warmth is shown, the longing for warmth, the longing for warmth, for great happiness. And what really grabs his optimism here is to set something in motion, maybe to free himself from entanglements, to let go of them, to change things. But here we really have a wonderfully positive energy. He or she is coming into this energy. It could also be your energy, your power, your positive aura, your very being, because it also shows that something here, you know, something that acts as a trigger creates an attraction. So again, when the spark has struck, it sets something in motion. Wow, right? As if it's maybe like a new perspective on you, something he might have been pushing away or not seeing all this time. So I think that's really great here. And you know, my dears, we'll also look at the timing tendencies, right? Once we have the whole picture here, the timing tendency. But, you know, when it comes to timing, you always have that in your own hands, right? And so, yes, I'll mention it, but don't hold me to it. As I said, I give you the energy because that's what's being shown right now. That's what I tell you, whether it's you or in personal readings as well. And in the end, that's really what it is. You have your own energy in your hands again, right? So now let's take a look further here. Okay, so yes, we have a lot of sudden events lying here inside himself. There is definitely a change, something he may have always been running away from. Yes, but let me tell you one thing. What we've touched on here, what we've seen regarding the topic with his environment, you know, that there's something like deceit, cunning, you know, some kind of deception in his background as well. That is really what is weighing on him tremendously. And it could also be, I'm saying could here on purpose, because we're dealing with a completely different question. It's only shown vaguely here. But, you know, I always say everything the cards reveal, that there really is something in his background that he keeps being pulled away by others. A deceitful game is going on here, one he never wanted to see. And that's also why he kept going back and forth, you know, on and off with you in contact. Because he also doesn't trust himself at all. You see, others keep having an influence on your loved one. And what you also don't see is that he or she that he or she actually has deeper feelings for you, but is hurt because of their background. So, what's occupying him? Yes, what's on his mind? He doesn't tell you that either. What you also don't see is what's going on in the background, that he's actually more or less just being used. He's being treated like a puppet here, at least in part. He shows you something different on the outside. And if you're currently in contact, or if contact is about to resume, he's also on high alert, you know? He's already slipping into this act of deception towards you, just like he always has. Hmm. But you've changed too. And that's what's completely unsettling your counterpart. It's something he's really thinking about a lot. Contact between the two of you. Like I said, you don't see what's going on in the background, that he's really being absolutely lied to here. He's being USCD, really. In other words, manipulated. I know used is a harsh word, right? I know. But he really is being manipulated here. Decisions made by others are constantly being adopted here. That's his issue to deal with, right? That's completely his topic. Because you're also saying for yourself that you want everything to be different. You don't want this whole thing anymore. Like I said, either you're currently in contact and you're worried, could it end up being like it was before, right? Is he going to pull away again now? Is he going to cut things off again now? Or when you get back in contact? Because I do see contact between the two of you, right? So definitely contact. But now it's also like this. If he's going to try, I'm telling you, he's definitely going to try to go back to his old patterns, just and also to withdraw again. It's like this. He tries, the emphasis is on tries. But if you, in this context of this collective reading, if you say to yourself, no, I'm going to behave a little differently here, then I actually see a different kind of change here as well. And here we have something very sudden, this change, which really unties the knot for him. To the point of breaking very clearly. And that's because I have you in communication. That's what confuses him. A change from you confuses him. It makes him insecure, restless, you know. Here it's like this.
maybe you wrote to me, maybe you always told a lot about yourself right away, or you focus too much on him. So it's like this, he was always pretty sure of you. Maybe it's also someone who kept getting in touch with you from time to time just to quickly check in, kind of putting you back in the waiting room again and again. So to put it in my own words, always keeping you in this waiting position. He kind of tries that again. He doesn't even think about it. Really, he doesn't give it a second thought. I've got him completely figured out there. It's just like whoosh, there's nothing there. Zero. But he will start thinking about it, which will totally confuse him if you start behaving differently towards him. In other words, that's when I see his insecurity. And I think that's great because it completely blocks that old behavior pattern he keeps falling back into. It's like a stop moment. Something's not right here. Maybe you don't reply right away or always respond the same way when he messages you, that you sometimes reply to him with a delay. And even when you do reply, I've actually had you scale back your communication a bit here. So if you used to write a lot, now you write less and keep it brief. For example, he writes, "Hi, how are you?" And you, "Yeah, good, thanks." Right? Maybe you don't even write. "And how are you?" Right? Maybe before you always said, "How are you? What are you up to?" And so on, right? And then you change the whole thing. And then all of a sudden there's this whoosh, this shift, because before it was always in slow motion, like the snail and the ball spinner, right? And you say, "Wow, no," right? And then that's when I untie the knot and it comes with like a bolt of lightning. Really, it just happened all of a sudden, unexpectedly, where he goes, "Wait a minute." That, like when a lightning bolt strikes or thunder suddenly comes, that shock, out of nowhere. When you also write or speak differently, maybe you used to send him voice messages and now all of a sudden you only write to him, but more briefly. Maybe you don't ask him as much anymore, but you reply briefly and to the point. Reducive, you're reducing here. Reduce the information you give him. Maybe you used to say things like, "Yeah, I did this today and I did that and I was there." And, just as an example. So even if you're not in contact via WhatsApp or social media, like in that area, it could also be in person, right? I'm just always using this as an example here. So that also means, as I said, if you're cutting back a bit, that you don't say exactly what you did if he asks, "How was your day?" Maybe you always used to write, "Yeah, exactly, I did this and that happened," and back and forth, and then this happened, for example. Now you say much less, like, "Yeah, it was good, it was fine," right? Maybe you can add in one small thing here. "Just got home now, or something like that, and that's it. This change in you completely wakes him up. Wait a minute, because here I also see jealousy. The jealousy is triggered, his thoughts, Well, I'll be completely honest here. I always say exactly what the cards show, right? Here, it's immediately. Maybe if it's on the weekend, she's having sex with someone else. Is there someone else? Because I feel the jealousy very strongly in the area of sexuality. So it's not just about sexuality, I feel the jealousy very strongly. Is there someone else, Or, for example, he texts you in the evening, right? It could also be that you have a bit of contact. He texts you in the evening, and maybe on Friday or Saturday, there's something going on where he says, he texts you to kind of check things out a bit, because I sense something mysterious about him to check. Are you at home, right? Something like that. So, but now the point is that maybe you don't even reply, that nothing comes from you at all. And maybe you are at home, right? But you don't write back anymore, you don't reply, and maybe you take 3, 4, 5 hours before you respond, right? For example. And then it's like, wow, with him I feel unsettled. If you don't reply right away, because he will reach this point if you don't answer immediately, if nothing comes from you at all, or maybe he sees you online, but you don't reply to him, but he sees you online, your counterpart, and you don't answer, then he'll get restless because I'm totally fidgety, I'm unsettled. What's going on? What's going on? So now his thoughts are really starting to circle. That's when he'll really wake up and say, "Hey, wait a minute." Whereas before he was always like, "Yeah, whatever, Yeah, everything in slow motion, like I said. He just does whatever he thinks is right. But then, no, the tables turn completely here because his thoughts are turning. They're changing too. That's when he really gets active, that guy. He actually goes through quite a few scenarios in his mind, thinking about exactly what you're doing. Because then, above all, he also becomes he's starting to worry, There's also a bit of disappointment, right? But it's more like, wait a minute. I'm not really the center of attention for her or for him right now. That can't be possible. That's how I left it. That's his reaction. And then he gets totally confused because he can't get a handle on you anymore. You're friendly, you're authentic. Yes, friendly, but different, but as I said, it's not like you're being a bit bitchy or anything like that. No, you're completely normal. And that's what totally confuses him. Give it to him in a loving, warm way, but just don't engage with him the way you used to. That could be something. You'll feel it because I see you very, very strongly in your intuition here. So that you'll really know when it's the right moment to write more, for something to come from you, but then that's enough, right? Or he writes to you as well, and then you also start to reply to him right away, Then he writes back to you immediately, and then you write again. But that there are still a few minutes of distance from you again every now and then. Relax, lean back, take several deep breaths in and out, and above all, trust yourself. Always tell yourself, hey, I'm writing the right thing, I'm saying the right thing, okay? That's really, really important. But hold back here, always react a little differently, not too much. I always like to say is like clutch and gas, so that you find the right balance. Because then, as I said, I become completely curious about you, really curious. And that's when things start to get active. And then you'll also notice that suddenly he starts responding to you. This doesn't happen right from the beginning because he's testing you, because he's also the type who thinks, okay, at first he notices it a little bit, but maybe he thinks it's just a test from you, right? Something like that. And then the whole thing shifts again and you start showing the old behavior patterns that he knows from you. But you don't do that instead. You take the lead now. And then I also see with him that he really becomes active. So what I see here is almost like a constant loop, just to exaggerate a bit, there's ongoing communication. And he becomes really active because he actually wants to meet you in person. It could even happen that he suddenly shows up at your workplace. For example, work is just one example. It could be somewhere else. He's just standing there, and he gets restless. Or it could also be that he suddenly calls you because you're not responding at the moment, right? This applies to your communication as well. You're friendly, you're sweet, but you're not sharing as much about yourself anymore. So to answer the question about his behavior, right? Yes, he tries to fall back into the same pattern as before, always this back and forth, he tries, but as I said, if you respond differently, he will also react completely differently. As I said, not right from the start, He won't notice it immediately. Sometimes he's not the quickest to catch on, Yes, but he will notice it and then he'll wait and see at first. It could also be that despite everything, he keeps trying to take the lead again and again. But you stay steady on your path, right? And then it clicks for him because he really thinks he's going to get a reaction out of you again. And then it works, That's what he's used to. But if you react differently, he will also react completely differently. But as I said, not right away. At first, he'll be a bit like, well, I'll get a reaction out of you again, and then everything will go as usual, Maybe he says or writes you something sweet or something that always used to win you back. But that doesn't work anymore. But in the end, you decide whether you want contact or not. You always do all of this freely for yourself, because I actually see you lying here wonderfully. Above all, you are also reclaiming your happiness, your own happiness. And with you, I can already see the change happening within you, for your inner self, for your being. And I think that's absolutely fantastic of you, So now we have the cross. The cross really is with him too. There's a burden, an incredible burden. And if I take the burden, which we also have here, this phase, then he would also, like we mentioned before, these old behavioral patterns, the entanglements, these blockages, he will suddenly end them. That's where he'll make the cut, This radical sudden ending means that he will change his behavior, definitely. But also in the background, what you see and what you don't see, the entanglements with other people as well. But as I said, that's his issue to deal with, right? You have your flower meadow, and your sunshine completely with you yourself because he loves you, right? fact. And that's where the longing really comes in, because that's when the real break happens, the lightning that strikes. If you suddenly react differently, all of a sudden, unexpectedly, that's when things like jealousy and so on come up, as I said, and then the attraction. I miss this woman or this man. I miss this person. Then the longing comes, because that's when the knot breaks. And that's exactly what he needs. And you will see that he really approaches you in a completely different way when you actually stick to your dreams, like I said, this clutch and gas thing, right? You can write a bit more sometimes. Yeah, okay. But always when something comes from him, right? Or if he asks you, if he doesn't ask you, don't write or say anything either, right? Yes. So as I said, he or she carries that burden. Yes, definitely, right? It really is a burden. And that's his own task that he has to deal with, and he will deal with it because he will become active, because now you are really becoming important to him, truly important, because he's realizing that now as well. The attraction, the longing, the affection for you, because now real heart-to-heart connection is coming back into play. So things are really starting to pick up now. And then we also have the birds. Once again, so with him, it's this restlessness, this excitement that's being shown. And I think that's really, really great because it comes up again here. We also have the nervousness again, right? So there's this real excitement, especially this, first he starts now, then maybe picks up his phone or something, or he's waiting for a phone call from you or something like that, right? This restlessness, will she get in touch? Will she get in touch? Is there something? Now the tables are completely turning now. You are turning the tables. We have movement. Yes, we have restlessness. But what took a long time, now we really have, pretty much the end of it here, right? But then things move quickly. So as I said at the beginning, he'll try it a little bit again. Yes, but something is happening there too. It could also be related to Wednesday, since we also have Wednesday included, right? Maybe something will happen then. Or maybe that's when it hits him like a bang, like a lightning strike, you know? That's possible, right? It could also be that on Wednesday, for example, he calls you for the first time in ages. I don't know. Oh, that he finally gets in touch with you again or shows up in front of your work or something like that, right? Somewhere. It could also be at a gym. Doesn't matter, right? As I said, there was a lot of movement, and that this activity really does happen right here in this very place, that something significant is truly, genuinely going on if you have contact, right? I would say it's about 3 to 4, could be days or even weeks. So within this particular time frame, that's really when the knot finally truly breaks for him, when lightning actually, indeed, in fact, quite suddenly strikes. I think that's great because it really happens all of a sudden and unexpectedly for him. So really fantastic. And the sun, as I said, on top of that, I think that's just wonderful, right? And if we now move on to the personal meeting, then it really could be a Sunday, you know, for the personal meeting. But as I said, there's something about Wednesday and Sunday. We definitely have some movement here also in terms of timing. So as I said, it could be weeks, but it could also be months. As I said, you know, it's in your hands. But based on what I see from the collective, from the whole reading, from the overall spread here, I wouldn't say it's going to be months if you already have contact instead. I really see it happening within this range of weeks, you know? Yes, about 3 to 4 weeks or so within this time frame, 2 to 4, 3 to 4, something like that, you know? This will take up to a few weeks, and then, well, the knot will really loosen and you'll notice a complete change. So within this time frame, okay, dear ones, I wish you a truly wonderful rest of the day from the bottom of my heart, and all the very best. Goodbye.